Hey, welcome to day 30 of our Read the Bible in a Year plan. Today we're on Exodus 1 through 3. When we pick up Exodus 1, we get a really quick summary of where we left off in Genesis. Jacob's family has come down to Egypt, and there were about 70 people who had come down with him. In the meantime, now it's been a few hundred years. And so we get a quick synopsis of sort of how we go from Jacob's family being brought in by Joseph and Joseph being number 2 in all of Egypt and the blessing that is to how did they end up as slaves? Well, this people grows and multiplies and becomes hundreds of thousands. Pharaoh looks and has forgotten Joseph, has forgotten why these people were here. He just sees foreigners who are exploding in population. They're not part of the Egyptians, and it feels like a threat. So they decide to oppress and enslave them, thinking that will help kind of control this. It has the opposite effect. They continue to flourish. He tries a more direct approach. Says to the Hebrew midwives, you need to remove every male child so that they don't keep multiplying at the rate they are. The Hebrew midwives fear God instead of Pharaoh, and they don't do it. They say, oh, well, they give birth while they're working and all this, and they won't do it. So the Israelites continue to multiply, continue to grow. Chapter 2 introduces us specifically, now that we've set the tone, we zoom in, the birth of Moses. His mother takes the baby, puts him in a basket, and sends him down the river when she knows Pharaoh's daughter is bathing. Seeing this child crying in the reeds, she calls out to Moses' sister and says, hey, go find me a Hebrew who can nurse this child. Brings back Moses' mother, and she's able to nurse her baby until he's ready to be weaned. And then he is raised as Egyptian royalty in the palace of Pharaoh. There are some indicators that he still recognizes that he's an outsider, that everybody kind of knows that he's also a Hebrew, but he's being raised as an Egyptian. It's kind of straddling the line between two different worlds. You might think that is going to be the way that he's going to be blessed. I mean, that kind of worked out for Joseph, but here we see that it's going to be a very different path for him. He sees an Egyptian mistreating one of his fellow Hebrews and ends up killing the guy. And then when he sees two Hebrews fighting, he goes to intervene and they call him out on the murder of the Egyptian. He realizes everyone's going to know, he's going to have to leave, and he flees, ends up in the land of Midian, where he meets his father-in-law, Jethro, a priest of Midian, it says. And we're not given much detail about what that is. Is he a priest who he worshiping some other gods? None of those details are given to us. But Moses takes one of his daughters as a wife, and they begin having children. Moses becomes a shepherd out in the wilderness. He was in Egypt for 40 years. Now he's going to be out here in the wilderness for 40 years. And one day he encounters the burning bush, a bush that is on fire but is not consumed. In this burning bush, Moses meets God, and he starts off calling out to him, and he introduces himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he tells him, I'm going to send you to deliver my people from Egypt. He says, who am I? How am I supposed to go? And he says, well, I'm sending you, and know that I'm with you, so don't worry about that. And he's like, okay, well, who do I tell them sent me? When I go, they're going to be like, what God sent you to this? In verse 14 of chapter 3, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. And now we get a glimpse in that. It's some form of I am, but in an eternal form. I am the God who was and who is to come. I am the God who exists, always has, and always will. I am existence itself and the source of all creation and existence is all encapsulated there. The name of God given here was considered so holy by the Hebrew scholars that they stopped putting the vowels with it because they didn't want anybody to mispronounce or misuse his name. And so they would say the Lord. And so when you see the Lord in all caps in your Bible, that's a good indicator that stands for this same name being used. It's in Hebrew, the letters are called Yod, He, Vav, He. In English transliteration, they would be YHWH. And for a long time, that was translated as it came from Hebrew into Latin and then into other languages. Some of the letters get changed a little bit, and it's where we get the name Jehovah in trying to pronounce God's name. There's no J in Hebrew, and so when you go back to the Hebrew letters and try to bring them more directly into English and other languages, you land on something closer to Yahweh is our best guess at what that might actually be and sound like. And that's what stood out to me today, is that the God who established Joseph, the God who established relationship with Abraham, the God who established a relationship with Isaac and with Jacob, and then with Jacob's son Joseph to bring his people into Egypt and save them from famine and allow them to flourish. And even though they are now in slavery, at the end of chapter 2, it says that God remembered. He heard the cry of Israel as they were oppressed. He remembered the covenant, not that he'd forgotten, but now he's taking action and he's doing something about it, and he's going to deliver them now that they are a great nation. He's going to bring them up out of Egypt, back into the land that he had promised them. He's going to fulfill his promises, and he's going to do it in a way where it's not just something that some God is doing, but the God who created everything, the great I am, Yahweh, is delivering his people through relationship where there's intimate knowledge of the Almighty Creator God and the people created in his image to know him and love him and be brought into relationship with him, and to be a nation that will be priests, mediators between God and all of humanity. Love to hear what stands out to you as you're reading this. Drop your comments and thoughts and questions on this video. Let us know what you've been getting out of these and what God has been saying to you as you read his word. Be rad for Jesus.